Good afternoon, members. We have already formed a quorum. It is also time to start. So let's start with the election of the chairman. Any nominations, please? Mr. Frankie Yick. Seconded. I accept the nomination. Is there a need to elect a deputy chairman? No. Then in this case, let's invite the administration to join us. Well, before the public officers join us, I would like to say that we are now dealing with the proposal to move a motion under Section 23, Paragraph 3 of the Road Traffic Ordinance. Do you have any pecuniary interest directly related to this issue that needs to be declared? No? All right. We have already elected the chairman. No, it hasn't finished. We have just started. All right. I would like to welcome Mr. Yao Ching-mo, Undersecretary for Transport and Housing, Ms. Crystal Yip, PAS for Transport and Housing, Ms. Ann Chen, PAS for Transport and Housing. And from the Transport Department, we'd like to welcome Ms. Stella Lee, Assistant Commissioner for Transport, Mr. Edmund Poon, Principal Transport Officer. And from the DFJ, we'd like to welcome Mr. Lai. So I'd like to give the floor to the administration. Please walk us through the paper. Yes, I will be brief. Let's be brief, because the person who asked for this meeting isn't here yet. Well, in this case, let me talk about what is involved in the proposed motion or the resolution. Well, I think we know that our transport policy is underpinned by public transport services with railways as its backbone. Other modes of public transport play supplementary roles. The role of PLBs is to provide supplementary feeder service as well as to serve areas with relatively lower passenger demand or where the use of high-capacity transport modes is not suitable. The number of PLBs has therefore been subject to a cap since 1976 at 4,350. Currently, about 75% of them are green minibuses, the rest being red minibuses. Well, on average, the daily total PLB patronage is approximately 1.8 million passenger trips, corresponding to a generally stable share of around 15% of the public transport market over the past 5 years. Well, in the past, we've been relying on Section 23 of the Road Traffic Ordinance to impose a cap on the total number of PLBs. The CE in Council may, by notice in Gazette, imposes a cap on the number of vehicles to be registered under a particular class of vehicles, and by a motion, the cap can be maintained. And as a result of this practice, the industry will have a relatively stable environment to meet with the challenges. In 2015, when the duration was about to expire, we carried out a review, and then there was a proposal to extend the cap, and the transport panel was consulted, and we got the support from the panel, and we got the support from the trade. So early 2016, we made a proposal to the LegCo to move a resolution. Owing to the special circumstances prevailing in 2016, there is the need to deal with a large volume of business, and we were not able to deal with the original resolution before the expiry date of the effective period of the statutory cap, that is 20th of June 2016. Therefore, in June last year, the CE in Council made the notice that is kept 374X, which imposes a cap of 4,350 in relation to PLBs, so as to prevent having a legal lacuna. But then it will have effect for 12 months, and it will expire on the 20th of June this year. When we made the notice, we advised the LegCo that during the 12-month effective period of the notice, the government would again, in accordance with the past practice, move a resolution at the LegCo pursuant to the relevant section of the ordinance to seek an extension of the effective period of the cap by 5 years. We are now planning to move a motion for passage of the proposed resolution so as to take it to the 20th of June 2022, so as to implement the recommendation which has got the support of the LegCo and the trade. I would like to say that this will only talk about the proposal to maintain the cap of PLBs. As to the seating capacity of the PLBs, the administration is now making preparation for the legislative revisions. And in fact, today we have sent out a LegCo brief. On the 26th of April, we're going to introduce the relevant bill to enhance the seating capacity of PLBs. And I think you may want to set up a bills committee so as to scrutinize the bill. And we want to satisfy the passengers' demand, and we also want to maintain the balance among the different modes of transport in the trade. We want to sort of take care of both. I think for today's meeting, I think it's better for us to focus on the statutory cap. Yes, I can confirm that just before I came downstairs, we got the LegCo brief that you mentioned concerning the enhancement of the seating capacity. Members, any questions? Well, in fact, it was Mr. Lam Kok Hong who asked for the subcommittee to be set up. He asked whether the House Committee had a discussion about this matter. In fact, it was discussed, but then at that time, the clerk to the House Committee wasn't able to give a definitive answer, and so there was a request to set up this subcommittee. As you have said, there was a discussion and there was no disagreement. Well, members, if you don't mind, I would like to repeat what transpired between myself and Mr. Lam Kwok Hong. He has asked for a subcommittee to be set up because for such an old estate, the service is inadequate. He's wondering whether it is owing to the inadequate number of PLBs. Well, I went to have a look. There are 4 routes serving such an old estate. They're making a loss. This is because of the question of the lead in water, and so the intake of population has been deferred. Most of the market stores and the shop spaces are vacant. There is a lack of patronage, so there are some operational difficulties. We have got a number of buses for 812 and 812A, and then for 813 and 813A, again, some minibuses have been deployed. I think the TD can be asked to make rationalization arrangements. Understand that for the 4 routes in operation, as a result of lack of patronage, they are making a loss. People take trips leaving the estate, but not the other way around. At peak hours, the utilization rate is 80%. Otherwise, it is just to 20%. For 813 and 813A, during peak hours, patronage rate 60%, non-peak 10%. All the 4 routes are making a loss. If the estate residents would like to enhance the service, I think the TD has to think of a way to deal with it. Now, we have got the Kwun Tong extension, we have got the South Island line in operation. Many operators are having difficulties. I think we can make arrangements. I have this view. I don't think it is reasonable for us to ask the operators to continue to suffer losses. Now, it is a matter of the administration's decision to delay the intake of population. Can the administration provide some financial subsidies? Now, it is not fair to ask the operators to make up for the shortfall. So perhaps you should try to have a dialogue between the TD and the operator so as to make improvements. Now, Leung Kwok Hong is saying that the service there is inadequate. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for explaining the case to Leung Kwok Hong. And thank you for explaining the purpose of the notice, and thank you for telling us about the case in Shui Chun O. I just wondered if the TD would like to sort of give an explanation. TD. Mr. Chairman, prior to the meeting, our officers at the district talked to the assistant of Mr. Leung Kwok Hong. We explained to him or her about the provision of public transport service. We are going to provide a paper in writing to him. Perhaps that's why he is not attending. First round, 5 minutes. Well, I think just a quick point. Well, you're going to extend it by 5 years. And the cap will last until 20th of June 2022. As you have said, very soon we are going to get the bill covering the enhancement of seating capacity. I think most would agree to the proposal, though some would like to have 20. Whether it is 19 or 20 seats, I think we support the broad direction. Well, in this case, I just wonder whether the 5 years should be sort of revised. I think we know that we're going to face a major change because for many years we haven't increased the number of seats. So by 2018 we'll be getting the first 19-seater. So are you going to consider the following? Instead of extending it by 5 years or having a review in 5 years' time, have a review in 3 years' time, so that you try to revisit the number after the 19-seaters have come into operation. First question, whether it can be 3 years. Second question, the cap at 4350. Well, many people have wondered whether this should be increased. Now, it is said that many operators do not have sufficient business. In other words, maybe there's no need for so many PLBs. In fact, the administration would like to reduce the number of vehicles on the road, whether private cars or commercial vehicles, so as to reduce the burden on the road network. So when you conduct a review, if it is found that there is no need to there's no justification for such a high number of vehicles, are you going to encourage the surrender of the licenses? 2 questions here. All right, Under Secretary, for the first question, Mr. Tam, what we did in the past was that we have had reviews once every 5 years. For 20 years, we haven't had any change, including the passenger demand. It has been quite stable. Therefore, we are reviewing it once every 5 years. When we looked at what happened in the past, I think it was acceptable to the trade. This is only the cap. If the market doesn't need that many vehicles, I think naturally they will try to reduce the size of the fleet. So on our part, it will be conducive to a stable environment if we say that there will be a review in 5 years' time, and they don't need to worry whether there will be a change in a couple of years, and that would put them off having further investment. This is our practice, and I don't think the trade disagrees with it. So I think it's right to keep the 5-year time horizon. And then for the PLB market, what we've seen is that during peak hours, passengers have been waiting for a longer time. So you may say that we haven't got enough PLBs. They may have to wait for the second PLB before they can board. But outside the peak hours, they don't need to deploy all the minibuses. Some of them are idle. That's what we have seen. Now for the PLB review, what we have seen is that now the trade has asked for more seats instead of more vehicles. that would take up the road space, that would enhance the operational efficiency without taking up the space on the road or having more idle vehicles.
And that can also meet peak traffic demand. So the focus should be on seating capacity and maintaining the fleet ceiling. Because if the industry feels that they don't need so many cars or vehicles, they can manage it. We feel that can help us satisfy market demand. Well, you say that 4350 is a ceiling, but in fact, how many minibuses are there operating? I always thought that these were licenses, and you say that when there's no need, then they don't need to auction. So do they just hold the license and they don't operate a fleet? So I think Ms. Lee can help answer. I can have TD answer. Well, we have quite a high usage rate. It's 90%. Actually, we have issued 4,350 licenses, and one license is connected to one vehicle, so we have 4,350 vehicles operating. In our recent survey, we can see that for GMBs, it's 90%, and for RMB, it's also 95%. So the few percent that are not on the roads, that's natural. There might be maintenance, or they might be waiting to be leased. So basically, we have liaised with the industry. So there is maintenance cost to a vehicle. So they won't just have a vehicle lying around and not doing anything. So we see that there is 95% of vehicles operating. Mr. Lau Fan, regarding the ceiling on minibuses, I feel that we should not alter the ceiling. I've observed it for a while, and I've also heard from the public. The minibus industry, they don't have any particular views. Well, of course, the public will say that the service is insufficient. And of course, as the Undersecretary said, they would like more buses during peak hours. And when I talk to the operators, they are willing to invest. But the difficulty is recruiting drivers. Sometimes they have vehicles lying around, but they don't have drivers. So I think I have two suggestions. First, will you consider providing some incentives to assist the minibus industry to help them recruit drivers? And even if they can recruit drivers, these are older drivers. So could you lower the threshold so the younger people can get a license and they can join this industry? Because a lot of people can, well, people are, they are driven away by the high thresholds, and they are not be attracted by the pay. I think one reason why service is insufficient is the drivers issue, and I think by increasing the capacity, that could help alleviate the problem. So I think we will be looking at that in the upcoming bill. So if we can increase the capacity to a certain extent, that addresses the service quality issue. Yeah. So unless we can resolve driver the insufficient number of drivers, that cannot solve the problem. We have a problem of insufficient drivers. So I hope the Undersecretary can help us by providing more gestures, allowing more drivers to enter the industry. Well, let me respond to the second point. We agree with the industry that if seating capacity goes up, the income per vehicle goes up, and this increase can help them recruit more drivers. So the industry has told us this point, So after considering different factors, we agree to increase the capacity. So regarding the first point, I'll defer to TD on how they can recruit drivers. Chairman, we have contacted the industry regarding driver shortage. They have always increased salaries. They deployed drivers flexibly. They also recruit part-time drivers. And just now, the Undersecretary said with the seating capacity increase, they can increase the income and they can help increase driver salaries to attract more people into the industry. Well, I don't agree with that. You increase the total number of passengers. You're saying that the total passenger is 1.8 million. That hasn't changed, and in fact, it has just dropped a little bit. So I don't believe that will increase revenue. It just helps reduce waiting time. So that comes to my second point. Why the threshold for the minibus driver is too high. You need to simplify it, and that's the same for taxi drivers. Well, now with GPS, that can help drivers find the locations and familiarize with routes. If you look at the minibus drivers, even for the for a lot of current drivers, they are in the 60s and 70s. So I don't think you need to change the ceiling. Next, Mr. Lok Jong Ho. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to follow up on Mr. Lau Gok Fun's concern on drivers' threshold. I have consulted the relevant trade union, and the pay is low. It's not attractive. It's the lowest amongst all professional drivers. The reason for low salary, one of the reasons is the operating environment is difficult. So does the government have any policy or support for developing the market? Especially, we know that the rail network is being developed, and that narrows the minibus opportunities. So have you identified new markets? Have you offered new routes for tender? So that might satisfy passenger demand and also improve their business environment and improve livelihood for drivers. Undersecretary, well, we do have two measures. We are aware that the rail network development creates changes to the minibus operating environment. There might be overlap or some parallel, and these minibus routes will be affected. But we also see a growth in demand. So the TD, whenever a rail line is completed, they will rearrange the routes. They might scrap overlaps, and they might create better feeder networks. So we now have South Island Line, West Island Line, and the Kwun Tong extension. You see that we have done this type of work, and in new districts when there's a new population, the TD will conduct this exercise. Recently, we have negotiated with the MTRCL regarding fare adjustment, and we added a new condition. They provide an interchange concession for GMBs, and some 500 routes will benefit. And the passenger can enjoy discounts, so it makes it more attractive for GMBs. We feel for the minibuses, it makes it more attractive for interchange. So this is how we help the industry. So TD staff can supplement on the first question. Well, aside from what the Undersecretary measured, in new districts, I'd like to mention that we have new minibus routes. For example, in the last 5 years, we created 10 plus routes. We have 50 plus vehicles running these routes. And even though we don't have figures, when we talk to the industry, they say that with the $2 concessionary fare, the passenger figures have increased slightly, and it does help them. And if the finance operation doesn't work out, they will apply for a fare adjustment with the TD. That can help them increase income and help adjust drivers' salaries. On behalf of the Federation of Trade Union, we support maintaining the ceiling at 4,350. Well, TD, you could help out by deploying new routes in the new districts. I know you need to balance taxis and bus company interests. So as the Undersecretary said, it's hard to just strike a ecosystem balance. Any more follow-up? If not, the legal advisor, could you follow up on the technical aspects? Well, there is a drafting technical issue. It's about the 2016 Road Traffic Ordinance Amendment Notice. And in the drafted proposal, it says 2016 101 notice. And the notice actually has its cap notice. It's cap 374 bracket X, subsidiary legislation X. So, Chairman, you could have DOJ drafting colleagues clarify with us why, when we have a cap, chapter number 374X, why do they refer to the legal notice number? Why do they refer to that description? Mr. Leung, could you explain? Thank you, Chairman. Well, I had to explain to the legal advisor, actually, the notice number, the legal notice 101, and the description, the chapter number can refer to the same text. So why do we refer to the Gazette number and not the chapter number to describe the ordinance? It's because the legal notice number, it's listed under our latest electronic notice, and this electronic notice was implemented at the end of February. The text description that we have when we submit to the LegCo, that was issued in about early March, and we considered that when we put forward the LegCo proposal, people might not notice we have a new electronic legal notice. So we use this conservative method, and we listed the Legislative Publication Ordinance. So let me repeat again. So whether we refer to the chapter, subsidiary legislation X, or when we refer to the electronic legal notice, we can still refer to the same subsidiary legislation. Well, yes, of course we understand. We have a designated number, it's just a different description. So the legal advisor asked, why is there such a change? Because the electronic version of Hong Kong laws was implemented at the end of February, and this resolution was proposed in March, and it was on rather short notice. So we considered that people might not be aware that we have the latest electronic Hong Kong laws, so we used the old description, the legal notice number, to describe the ordinance.
In other words, in future, you will use the new format, that is the electronic format. Yes, we are going to use the chapter number. But then, in certain circumstances, we may also make the reference using another approach. But then, by both approaches will still be okay. All right, members, any other views? If not, then perhaps the administration can take us through the legal notice. I think it is very simple. What has been changed? That is sort of cross scrutiny. He will take us through. All right, I will go through it very quickly. Well, the purpose of the resolution is to extend the validity period of the statutory cap of 4350 up to the 22nd or the 20th of June 2022. As simple as that? Yes. Anything else? All right. If there isn't any other question, then the admin has to tell us as to when you're going to go back to the LegCo. We will do so as quickly as possible because we have the original resolution ending in June. You wait for the completion of the budget, right? I have no other questions. About other members? No. All right. Thank you.